Early life and inspiration, the seeds of change. The story of Emmeline and Sylvia Pankhurst is one of courage, determination, and an unyielding belief in justice. Their journey began in a time when the world was vastly different from what we know today. Emmeline and Sylvia Pankhurst were sisters who changed history. Born into a family that valued social justice, they were exposed to the harsh realities of inequality from a young age. Their parents, both advocates for equal rights, instilled in them the importance of fighting for what is right. They fought for women's right to vote. This was not just a political battle. It was a fight for recognition, respect, and the fundamental human right to have a voice in society. The suffragette movement was a beacon of hope for many women who had been silenced for too long. This was a time when women had few rights. They were often confined to the roles of wives and mothers, with little opportunity to pursue their own ambitions or contribute to society in meaningful ways. The societal norms of the early 20th century were rigid and unforgiving. They were expected to be wives and mothers, not leaders. The idea of women stepping into public life, leading movements, and demanding change was revolutionary. It challenged the very fabric of the society they lived in. The sisters grew up in a family that believed in justice. Their home was a hub of intellectual and social activity, where ideas about equality and reform were discussed openly. This environment nurtured their sense of justice and their desire to make a difference. Their parents taught them that everyone deserved equal rights. This belief was not just a theoretical concept. It was a guiding principle that shaped their actions and decisions throughout their lives. They learned that true change requires both conviction and action. This belief shaped their lives. It gave them the courage to stand up against injustice and the determination to keep fighting, even when the odds were against them. Their commitment to equality was unwavering. It made them want to fight for a better world. They saw the potential for a society where women could participate fully and equally, and they were determined to make that vision a reality. Their activism was driven by a deep sense of purpose and a belief in the possibility of change. Emmeline and Sylvia saw the injustices women faced. They witnessed firsthand the struggles of women who were denied basic rights and opportunities. This fueled their resolve to fight for a more just and equitable society. They knew things had to change. The status quo was unacceptable, and they were not willing to stand by and watch as women continued to be marginalized and oppressed. Their vision for a better future was clear and compelling. They were determined to make a difference. Their activism was not just about securing the right to vote. It was about challenging the deeply entrenched systems of power and privilege that kept women in a subordinate position. They were fighting for a fundamental shift in society. Their passion for equality would inspire generations to come. The legacy of Emmeline and Sylvia Pankhurst is a testament to the power of perseverance and the impact of standing up for what is right. Their story continues to inspire and empower women around the world to fight for their rights and to believe in the possibility of change. Joining the fight first steps towards equality. The journey towards gender equality has been long and arduous, marked by the relentless efforts of countless women who refused to accept the status quo. Among these trailblazers were Emmeline and Sylvia Pankhurst, whose names have become synonymous with the fight for women's suffrage. Emmeline and Sylvia joined the fight for women's suffrage. They were driven by a profound belief that women deserved the right to vote, a right that had been unjustly denied to half the population. Their involvement in the movement was not just a personal mission, but a call to action for all women to stand up and demand their rights. They believed women deserved the right to vote. This belief was rooted in the fundamental principle of equality, a principle that dictated that every individual, regardless of gender, should have a voice in the governance of their country. The Pankhurst's advocacy was a beacon of hope for many women who had long felt marginalized and voiceless. It was a long and difficult struggle. The road to suffrage was fraught with challenges, including societal resistance, legal obstacles, and even physical danger. The suffragettes faced an uphill battle, but their resolve was unwavering. They organized marches, held rallies, and used every platform available to them to spread their message. But the sisters never gave up. Emmeline and Sylvia Pankhurst were at the forefront of this movement, their voices ringing out in defiance of the oppressive norms of their time. They inspired countless others to join the cause, creating a powerful and united front that could not be easily ignored. They gave speeches and organized protests. Their speeches were not just words, they were calls to action, rallying cries that galvanized women across the nation. The protests they organized were acts of courage, public demonstrations of their refusal to be silenced or sidelined. They challenged the government and society's expectations. The suffragettes were not afraid to confront authority, to challenge the laws and norms that kept women in a subordinate position. Their actions were bold and often controversial, but they were necessary to bring about change. Their actions were met with resistance and hostility. The suffragettes faced significant opposition, not just from the government, but also from segments of society that were resistant to change. They were often met with hostility, their protests disrupted by police and hostile crowds. But they remained steadfast in their beliefs. Despite the resistance, the suffragettes did not waver. Their determination was evident in their faces, in their unwavering stance during protests, and in their continued advocacy for their cause. The Pankhursts faced criticism and even imprisonment. Emmeline and Sylvia were no strangers to the harsh consequences of their activism. They were arrested multiple times, their imprisonment a testament to the lengths they were willing to go to for their cause. But their determination only grew stronger. Each arrest, each setback only fueled their resolve. They emerged from prison more determined than ever, their spirits unbroken and their commitment to the cause unwavering. They knew their fight was about more than just the vote. The Pankhursts and their fellow suffragettes understood that the right to vote was just one part of a larger struggle for equality. Their fight was about securing justice and equal rights for all women in every aspect of life. It was about equality and justice for all women. The suffragette movement laid the groundwork for future generations to continue the fight for gender equality. Their legacy is a reminder that the struggle for women's rights is ongoing, and that the first steps taken by pioneers like Emmeline and Sylvia Pankhurst were crucial in paving the way for a more just and equal society. The Women's Social and Political Union, a force for change. In 1903, Emmeline Pankhurst formed the Women's Social and Political Union, or WSPU. This was a pivotal moment in the history of women's rights. Pankhurst, a determined and passionate activist, believed that the time had come for women to take a stand and demand their right to vote. She was not alone in this belief. Many women of the era were growing increasingly frustrated with the slow pace of change and the lack of progress in achieving gender equality. This organization was different. It used militant tactics to demand votes for women. Unlike other groups that had relied on peaceful protests and petitions, the WSPU believed that more aggressive actions were necessary to draw attention to their cause. They were willing to take risks and face the consequences of their actions, all in the name of securing the right to vote for women. The WSPU held rallies and marches. They disrupted political meetings. These events were often highly organized and well publicized, drawing large crowds and media attention. The suffragettes used these opportunities to make powerful speeches, distribute literature, and engage with the public. Their goal was to raise awareness and build support for their cause, and they were remarkably successful in doing so. They even resorted to property damage to make their voices heard. Their actions shocked many. The suffragettes smashed windows, set fires, and vandalized public property. These acts of civil disobedience were intended to disrupt the status quo and force people to pay attention to the issue of women's suffrage. While some criticized their methods, others admired their courage and determination. But they brought attention to the cause. The media coverage of their actions helped to spread their message far and wide. Newspapers and magazines reported on their activities, often with sensational headlines and dramatic photographs. This publicity helped to keep the issue of women's suffrage in the public eye and generated widespread debate and discussion. The WSPU's motto was "Deeds, not words." This slogan encapsulated their philosophy and approach to activism. They believed that actions spoke louder than words and that meaningful change could only be achieved through direct and decisive action. This motto became a rallying cry for the suffragettes and inspired many women to join their cause. They believed that peaceful protests had failed. For years, women had been petitioning, lobbying, and holding peaceful demonstrations, but these efforts had yielded little progress. The suffragettes felt that it was time to adopt a more confrontational approach and to take bold and dramatic actions to demand their rights. They felt they had to take more drastic action. The suffragettes were willing to go to great lengths to achieve their goals. They faced arrest, imprisonment, and even physical violence, but they remained undeterred. Their commitment to the cause was unwavering, and they were prepared to make significant sacrifices in the fight for women's suffrage. Their militancy divided the movement. Not everyone agreed with the WSPU's tactics. Some members of the suffrage movement believed that the use of violence and property damage was counterproductive and alienated potential supporters. This led to divisions within the movement, with some groups distancing themselves from the WSPU and its methods, but it also made it impossible to ignore. Despite the controversy, the WSPU's actions succeeded in bringing the issue of women's suffrage to the forefront of public consciousness. Their bold and uncompromising approach forced politicians, the media, and the general public to confront the question of women's rights and to consider the urgent need for change. The suffragettes' legacy is a testament to the power of determined and courageous activism in the pursuit of justice and equality.